Welcome, everyone. My name is Representative Titone. Thank you for joining me today and my guests to discuss the resources available to small businesses and employees during the current COVID-19 crisis. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to briefly go over how this virtual platform is going to work. For those of us who are using Zoom on a computer or a smartphone, you will have the opportunity to ask questions of our guests using the QA feature on your screen at any time. So once you locate where that is, we will answer as many questions as possible with the time we have available. For those of you joining on the phone, we won't be able to take your questions, but I highly encourage you to contact me afterwards if you still need more information. And there are more questions than we will have time for. We will also try to answer those offline and then and give you that information a little bit later on as well. Today we are very fortunate to have several guests and experts here that are going to help you answer your questions. We have Angela Atkinson. She's the director of the North Metro Denver Small Business Development Center. We have Cammie Welch, who is the president of the Arvada Chamber of Commerce. We have Daniel Ryley, we'll call him Danny for this one. He's the executive director of the Arvada Economic Development Association. And we have Daniel Chase, who is here on behalf of the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. And we also have Dot Miller. She's the CEO of The Solution, which is an association management company. She's also the co-founder of the National Credentialing Institute, an online learning company. And Dot is also Mayor Pro Tem of the city of Arvada. All right, so we're going to use this event to help answer your questions on resources critical to your businesses and your staff. And as everyone knows, assistance programs are quickly being devised to help small businesses and employees navigate the uncertainties that come with the unanticipated crisis like COVID-19. Thankfully, there are more things to share with you every day, and we're going to try to do that as best we can. But I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves a little bit more and talk about their area of expertise and the current state of the business and employment assistance programs in their organization. Let's start out with Daniel Chase.
Great, thank you so much, Representative. I appreciate you letting us speak today. My name is Daniel Chase. I'm the Chief of Staff to the Executive Director of the Department of Labor and Employment. We are currently engaged on a number of fronts with the COVID emergency situation. And our staff have been reacting quite quickly to the change in the layout and landscape of the workforce now. So we are currently, as many people have heard, our unemployment insurance division is top of mind for most people. We have seen a dramatic increase in claims to our unemployment insurance division, and many hundreds of thousands of people trying to get to our call center. Right now, just on regular unemployment insurance, so that means that you're a W-2 employee that was laid off or lost hours through no fault of your own, including because of the COVID pandemic. We're still continuing to encourage people to file those claims online, coloradoui.gov, for your benefits. Our website is working a lot better now. We're seeing just today, actually, we released a news release that last week we took in 60,000 claims through the website, which is a big increase from the 20,000 we saw the week before and the 2,000 we saw the week before that. For those of you that have been following the national stage, the CARES Act passed Congress last week with pretty significant expansions to the unemployment insurance landscape for us. For those who are on regular unemployment insurance, that includes $600 per week in additional benefits on top of your already calculated benefits from your wages, as well as an extension from the normal 26 weeks that you're allowed to claim unemployment. That extends it to 39. The other thing that does is it creates something called pandemic unemployment assistance, which expands the access to unemployment insurance beyond what is normally allowed for in the current benefits structure. So now people who are independent contractors or who own your own business who don't normally pay into the unemployment insurance trust fund will qualify for those benefits, which includes that $600 per week in additional benefits on top of your wages. We are currently working to stand that system up. We're encouraging people who only qualify under pandemic unemployment assistance to not file yet. We're working on not only getting federal guidance to figure out exactly what we need to get from people, but also to build a system that can take in those claims. Again, follow coloradoui.gov for the latest info on that. And so with that, I will stand by for questions.
All right. Before we go to questions, we'll go to Angela and talk about some of the federal help for small businesses.
So hello, everyone, and thank you for sharing this platform, for communicating what's every day. It's a changing landscape with what's going on the SBA loan front. The SBDCs are funded by the SBA. We're also hosted at Front Range Community College, and we serve Adams County in the Arvada area as well with free one-on-one consulting. How that is translating these days is helping small businesses understand the CARES Act and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the acronym being EIDL. It has been confusing from the beginning, but there's also been a different policy set forth with the CARES Act last week, as Daniel mentioned, and also the U.S. Treasury came forward yesterday or the day before yesterday with its own take on some of the policy issues related to the PPP, or the Payroll Protection Program. So we're taking direction from the SBA, also holding back a little bit, as you mentioned, Daniel, to wait to get guidance from at the federal level on what's really true and what is, people can take literally to the bank, which will start tomorrow with the funds being released to the banks for the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program. So I'm not sure if this is the time to really dive into what those specific programs are. SBA, the disasterloan.gov website has a lot of information on that EIDL loan. Plus, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the grant or the advance that came forward as part of the CARES Act. And I do want to make mention of that because the philosophy behind that was to give small business owners a quick infusion of cash while they're waiting for their EIDL loan to be approved or their PPP loan to be approved. And our consultants are standing by, can help folks understand and navigate that process. But there's a lot of resources out there now for small businesses, in addition to what's being offered locally in the municipalities and economic development agencies, as well as at the county level.
All right. Well, thank you, Angela, for that. Let's let Daniel Ryley talk a little bit about the local resources that are available here in the Arvada area in Jefferson County.
Thank you, Representative, and thanks for the opportunity to address your constituents this evening. So yeah, Arvada Economic Development, we're a full service economic development or business liaison for Arvada businesses with the city of Arvada, dealing with business and policy issues locally here in Arvada, resources that help businesses in all facets of their operations, internal and external. And we have a lot of great partnerships with the folks here on this call, so thanks to them as well. Right now, the biggest, I think, needs out there for our small businesses fall into two buckets. One is communication and information, and the other one is financial resources. So I'm glad that Angela's on the call to be able to talk about what's coming from the SBA. Those are going to be probably the most robust and helpful financial resources for small businesses in Arvada, as well as across the state. Additionally, the city is working on putting together some programs that may be able to help carry some businesses through in the gap period, so to speak, between now and when those SBA loans start to finally hit those business accounts. So we're actively working with the city of Arvada and some other community partners to see what types of programs can actually inject cash into the businesses quickly, and doing that in a strategic way that is also conscious of the long-term recovery efforts that we're going to have to plan for, helping us get back to a place where businesses can be generating revenue again in a consistent and viable way. So more to come on that. I wish I had more specific information, but we're really excited about some programs that we're working on that we're hopeful will be supported by the City Council and the Arvada Economic Development Association Board, as well as, again, some other community partners to inject some cash into our local businesses. We do have some other existing and ongoing programs that small businesses in Arvada can tap into. We have a microloan program set up. There are some third-party nonprofit community development commercial business lenders in the region that we partner with and we connect with to help these businesses find all the resources for capital infusion that happen to be available. We've partnered with Arvada Chamber to host what's called the Coronavirus Business Toolkit, and that's hosted on the Arvada Chamber's website, arvadachamber.org, and I'm sure Cammie will talk a little bit more about that later as well. But we've decided to try to centralize all of these resources for businesses in one place and help distribute that information by organizing it for those businesses. So there is a tab for financial resources. There's a tab for tax and utility resources, as well as some other things that kind of help financially, that businesses can browse through and find out what's relevant to them and go to some source material to get the information that will help them actually apply for or attach to some of those programs. So we really encourage folks to check that business toolkit out, again, on the Arvada Chamber's website, and just look for the COVID-19 tab or the Coronavirus Business Toolkit. With that, I'll save some opportunities for questions later, but also I think that Cammie can fill in some of the additional really creative things that we're doing in Arvada to help businesses out through this time, not only by sharing those resources and information, but also by some creative programming to help stimulate spending into those businesses from our residents and citizens. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Daniel, for that information. And that's a great segue to go into what the Arvada Chamber is doing with Cammie Welch.
Wonderful. Thank you, Representative. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the innovation that's happening in Arvada. I want to kind of sing the praises of the chamber industry across the state right now. Chambers are stepping up in a big way to help businesses, and it's, I think, an honor for all of us to be part of being, solution-oriented and coming up with programmatic elements to support businesses during a really challenging time. So the first thing I wanted to note is most people know us as a membership-based organization, and right now we're not operating that way. We want to be here for 100% of businesses that need support. So everything I'm about to talk about is open to people to reach out if they have ideas or things that we can help them with, so we can get them into the fold of all of these great programs. We've thought about this work in 3 different buckets. The first was kind of managing the initial crisis, making sure that people had the information that they needed to make the right decision for their business, as well as some creativity and uplifting opportunities for them as well. So those first couple weeks as we were managing this, we lifted up things like the Takeout Takeover that you'll find on arvadachamber.org that highlights the many restaurants in our community that are still serving during this time. So anybody that wants to be listed on there will note if you do takeout or delivery. We have about 120 restaurants currently listed on that. So it's a really great place to find awesome takeout. We also worked really diligently to lift up that resource toolkit that Daniel mentioned, and there are pages and pages of content on there. Our team right now is going through and building out one-pagers to summarize a lot of that content because it is a little bit overwhelming and cumbersome. So within the next couple days on our website, you'll be able to find one-pagers on funding, mental health resources, nonprofit resources, and so on to kind of help make great decisions. Additionally, we want to make sure we're helping to lift up the local economy in really meaningful ways during this time. And so we've looked at other ways that companies are getting creative, and we've seen some really unique innovation during this time. So we have highlighted on our website virtual experiences that people can participate in, whether that's dance classes or art classes. We've highlighted gift cards that people can purchase. That's a great way to continue to support the local economy. We have local promotions and incentives that people are currently offering. So there's a lot of ways for us, even though we're at home, to continue to help our community thrive. As we work through kind of these next few weeks and we figure out what our new normal looks like, the Chamber will continue to be an educational source with our webinar series, as well as thinking about what do businesses need to be working on as they move into what this next phase looks like. So things around health and safety and innovation and technology are going to be of top priority for us as we move forward. And I'll be glad to answer any specific questions or take ideas that people have on how we can help them further as we move through the conversation today. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. And anyone online want to start putting some of your questions together using the Q&A feature, we can start getting them in the queue, and we can get them over to our panelists to answer for you. And we have one more guest who is ready to speak, and that's Dot Miller. She's going to tell us a little bit about what she's up to in helping businesses get what they need in this tough time.
Sure. Thank you so much, Representative Titone, and thank you for hosting this town hall. I think it's important that we are in front of the community right now, answering their questions and being available to them. I also want to give a huge shout out to Daniel Ryley and Cami Welch. They have done incredible work in taking amazing leadership roles right now for the business community. Great work. And our city is very, very proud to have them on the leadership team. I also want to give a shout out to our leader, City Manager Mark Devon. He has been instrumental in this time, in the state of emergency for Arvada. So thank you so much to everybody that has worked really hard. As the Mayor Pro Tem role, I'll put that hat on. You know, I have been on calls, lots of video calls with Mayor Williams and other mayors around the state, really talking about what the needs are for each of our communities and what that looks like. We were on a call earlier today, listening to the governor and asking questions of the governor and where we were at with different issues that our communities are having. You know, people want to know why they can't play golf. You know, if they could just go out there and play golf and not interact with people, is that possible? I take calls and emails from the people that live in Arvada. Can they go to the skate park? Is my business an essential business? So taking the time to answer those calls from different constituents as well. Business hat, you know, one of the things that we're doing is really working with businesses to make sure that they know whether or not they're an essential business. And the best advice that I can give to you is, if you have a question about it, you know, go out there and there's the governor's website has an email address where you can list your business and the reasons you think it's essential, and they will tell you whether or not you're an essential business. So it's best to get that in writing. It's what I tell people, and you know, I work hard to help them get the answer that they need, but it really does need to come from the governor's office.
All right, very good, thank you. So we've got a few questions here, and we will have a hard stop around 5 o'clock because the Zoom needs to go off to some other people who want to use it after me. So we will start off with some questions that we do have here. And not sure who we want to address this one to, but someone was asking about what about undocumented folks? Where do they play in this whole situation? Where can they get the support that they need?
This is Daniel. I'm happy to kick that off just a little bit on my side. I just want to be clear that in terms of unemployment insurance, people that are DACA recipients would qualify for that. We have not worked out the undocumented side yet. And then as well, we are working with our senior advisor on New American Integration, Kit Tainter, to identify other resources to put toward that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So another question about independent contractors. They're, a lot of the gig employees, the 1099 people. When are they going to be able to get the support that they need? I heard that there was some legislation in Congress that might be working on that. Is it true?
Yeah, Daniel again. Independent contractors under the extension of unemployment benefits that the CARES Act provides now qualify for unemployment insurance. So what we're anticipating is that that will be a percentage of your earnings plus that $600 a week. As soon as we're hoping to stand that system up to taking those claims soon. We don't have a timeline yet, as we have, like I said, have not received that federal guidance to figure out exactly what we're doing there.
Okay, all right. Here's another one. What can a small business owner who rents their space do to get relief so small businesses aren't lost because of rent but no income?
So I can address that through a couple of the SBA loan tools that are available for short-term needs. So the EIDL grant that I mentioned in the introduction is an opportunity for small business owners to apply. It's a streamlined process. So for any applicants who tried to apply a couple of weeks ago, it was pretty onerous. The system wasn't meant to, it's meant to handle localized disasters, not pandemics. They've actually revamped the system, and it takes 30 minutes to complete an application for an EIDL loan, an EIDL loan. As part of that loan process, and the specifics are on the SBA website, you can apply for by checking a box saying, I would like to be considered for the EIDL advance or grant. And within 3 days, you put your banking information, and they'll assess your qualifications as part of the information that you put into the grant or the loan application, but you will be given an advance. It does not need to be repaid. It's truly a grant. That's regardless of whether you get approved for the loan or not. So it does not have to be repaid. So the philosophy behind this was the issue that this constituent mentioned is like, I need money now in order to keep my doors open. So it's an amazing tool. And if you go to the SBA website, you can see where you can avail yourself of that.
And I'll also jump in there and just say that some of the programs we're working on in Arvada will also address that very thing. And I think especially if they can be paired with the resource that Angela just mentioned, the ideas, and I can't give too much detail just because I don't want to put false information out that hasn't been approved, but some of the ideas we're toying with are zero interest loans with loan forgiveness incentives attached to them, and same situation where they can be deployed very, very rapidly in a matter of days or less. So I appreciate what the SBA is doing to address that short-term gap as well. I think honestly what businesses need to do is look at this in a holistic sense and understand how many resources out there from different agencies can you pair together, because some businesses that $10,000 will stretch a lot further than it will for others. So you have to think about how can you stack and layer some of these resources that you're learning about, and work with your financial advisors or your CPA to understand the cost benefit analysis of taking on certain debts, and what those interest rates might imply, and also understanding what types of free monies are out there and how you can really put together a plan that helps you survive this today and into the next few months or unforeseeable length of time that we're in this situation. I also am recommending that these small businesses and tenants open up those lines of communication with your landlords, if at all possible, as well as with your banks and your creditors and your vendors, because you're in a situation now, and we understand that all of your bills are hitting. It's April 2nd, your rent's due, you're making payroll, all of your vendors are sending you invoices, you're running low on inventory, you're trying to stay open and keep these things going, you still have to pay your utilities and overhead. So start to think holistically about what resources you can apply to sort of chip away at all those different expenses, either getting them deferred or potentially finding that grant money or really cheap loan money to help you survive through that. And I know it's not easy to say just call your landlord, but I would just say make sure you're doing those things on top of applying for the SBA programs and on top of staying in tune to what's going to be coming out as assistance from your local communities.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Here's another question for Daniel at CDLE. What kind of guidance are you waiting on from the federal government to begin to allow gig workers and independent contractors to apply? Kind of similar question. Is early next week still the anticipated time that the system will be ready?
Yeah, those are both good questions, and I'll address them both. The first one, what are we waiting for from the federal government? All of these benefits are being paid for by the federal government just through CDLE. And since we have never qualified gig workers or independent contractors as eligible for unemployment, and our traditional eligibility checks would not work for independent contractors, we need to figure out exactly what the federal government wants us to collect from folks to identify them as eligible under this. So until we figure out what they want us to collect from them, we cannot build a system to collect that. As for the second question, in terms of early next week, we're hoping so. But again, we haven't heard anything from the federal government. And so we thought we'd hear today, but we did not. So at this point, I'm starting to doubt even early next week will be possible, but we're trying our best, and we will implement that system as soon as we get that guidance.
All right, thank you. Here's another question we have. Someone who drives for Lyft, they're saying Lyft is still open, but there's no passengers. So they're wondering how they'll be able to file for unemployment in that case. Are they going to need documentation to do that? And I guess I'll ask a follow-up question to that. Is there any resources that are available to people who might want to be looking for something else to do other than the Lyft in the meantime?
Sure, both good questions as well. So to the first question, no, you shouldn't have to provide us any documentation. Just like a normal job, when you file for unemployment, you don't have to be separated from that job. Officially, that could be a reduction in work hours or a temporary furlough. That would still qualify you under unemployment insurance for those lost hours and for that time period. In terms of resources for other folks that may not want to wait for us or may want to get working right now, we are encouraging people, please go to your local workforce centers, Adams County Workforce Center, for those folks, Denver, if that's where they're at. Workforce centers, while not operating in person, services are doing everything virtually. They'll be able to provide you resume assistance, job search help, other things like that to help get you back to work and fill those wages in where unemployment insurance is not able to right now.
Great. Here's another question that I don't know if anybody has an answer to. What is the current expected timeline federally, statewide, and locally for the quarantine? We hear about extending the timeline through April, but what are the expectations for when this might end? And that might be a question for a medical expert, which we don't have on the panel. But does anybody have any information that they're aware of that they could share? And knows okay. I don't have any answers. We're on calls with the governor's office all the time. We don't usually get a hard answer on that because I don't think anybody wants to put a hard deadline on something that is still rapidly changing. So we're going to have to just be patient and wait to see how things are panning out and take it from there. Here's our next question. We have a salon in Arvada. What would you suggest on getting help paying our rent?
I'll take that one again. So I would say, again, to Angela's point that that SBA cash advance could be really crucial for you right now. And then stay tuned. I would say within the next week, you're going to see communications coming out of the city as well as our office. And we'll make sure that that information is on the coronavirus business toolkit as well. I'm pretty hopeful that there will be some very timely and meaningful resources for small businesses that you can access to help for this very scenario.
Okay. Here's one about part-time employees. Someone who's a spa owner, they have part-time employees. How do they help those employees if they're filling out unemployment for part-time people?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, part-time folks still would qualify under unemployment, assuming that you as the employer were paying into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. The most assistance you can give them, number one, make sure that they're filing online, they're paying close attention to the application. For business owners, keep in mind that we are socializing the cost for all unemployment claims right now. Which means that your business is not going to be hit for every unemployment claim that comes in. The other thing that you can do is just be quick and responsive as we reach out to confirm the reason for termination or for furlough. We'll be reaching out to you guys to get your side on that, and the quicker the response, the quicker we can get those adjudicated and those benefits paid.
All right, thanks. Okay, here's an interesting question. Although we're Arvada residents, our company is located in Englewood. I'm hearing about grants and loans, and I'm bewildered about how we'd apply. I had already started working on a refinance for our building mortgage before all this hit, and I had sent in the appropriate paperwork, but I'm not getting an answer from the bank. Curious about how long I should wait and how I'd go about moving forward on a variety of these areas. So kind of a multi-jurisdictional question.
Yeah, maybe this was more in Angela's court. As a Inglewood commercial property, there's not probably much the city of Arvada would have resource-wise along that front. But again, you're welcome to still look at all of the global resources on the toolkit that on the Chamber's website, regardless of what community you live and or work in.
So I would add that I believe Inglewood falls into the South Metro Aurora SBDC, and they have consultants available to help you work through. It sounds like a bit of a complex kind of weighing of options between loans and bank communications, et cetera. So if you go to coloradosbdc.org, there's a map, and you can click on where your business is, and it'll pull up all of the contact information. And I know that the SBDCs are trying to turn around free one-on-one appointments, within 24 to 48 hours. And given the deluge of requests, I'm not sure that that still holds, but we are trying to respond quickly to those kinds of questions.
I would also reach out to the South Metro Chamber of Commerce down there as well. So they'll have some resources on their website, and they may have some better answers as to banks. And the other thing is, unfortunately, the hard thing is it may be taking longer because everybody's short staffed right now. People are working from home. There might be one person in that bank handling everything, and that goes. If paperwork is filed not in Colorado and somewhere else, everybody is on the same stay-at-home order right now, and it might just be that it's taking longer. But I think reaching out to your local Chamber of Commerce and to your bank again is probably the best answer or advice that I would get.
All right, great, thanks. Here's the next question. The discussion here today is mostly focused on the preservation of small businesses. However, it has not been mentioned yet how the local government will protect workers in this time of crisis. How will the city of Arvada protect its essential workers and protect those who lost their jobs? I think Dot and Cammie might have some information on that one.
Well, I can get started. I think that the resources that we've been talking about with the Department of Labor and Unemployment, as far as resources that Daniel was talking about and alluding to earlier, we haven't discussed that. We haven't met as a council, but we are meeting on Monday night, and I'm sure a lot of these topics are coming up. We're meeting via Zoom, so we didn't have a meeting last Monday and met the previous Monday to be able to vote on an emergency order, and that was it. So hopefully on Monday we'll be having these conversations, and I would encourage you definitely to connect to the Zoom link, and hopefully you'll be able to speak in public comment or enter your question. It's something that we are testing tomorrow afternoon to make sure that the public will be able to do it, but we've been on many, many calls exactly like this, and I'm sure we'll be able to have that resource available to you to ask that question on Monday night.
I'll add to that. We have been doing a little bit of research on kind of the resources available to people that have become unemployed. And so again, on the Chamber website, you'll find a workforce toolkit that outlines a variety of different resources and places for people to go to get more information on how to file and support that's available. Additionally, we've been looking for employers that are still hiring, and there are a number of employers that are still seeking people to come work for them. And so there's also a list on our website of those employers.
All right, well, good. Okay, let's go to the next question we have. If someone's receiving an employment, can they still do some work for the employer?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of if you're considered job attached, which what that would be under, you can absolutely still take unemployment for the lost hours that you're suffering. Just be sure to report that to us so we don't end up overpaying you.
Okay, thank you for that one. So here's someone saying someone about Denver school board members, but we don't have any Denver school board members on this panel today. Next question, does it make sense for us to get a freeze on our rent and mortgage payments for the duration of the crisis, given the severity and quickness of the emergency?
So I'm happy to throw an opinion about that. And then I saw that Daniel was ready to speak, and I'd love for you to go if you'd prefer. I'm going to speak as a landlord. So I have some rental properties in Denver, and what we've done is we've reached out to our tenants and said, hey, it's okay if you can't pay your rent right now. We will not charge you late fees. If you can pay a little bit, great. If you can't pay anything until later, great. Totally, we are absolutely easy. Whatever is going to make you feel comfortable, that's what we want to do. So then it becomes, every landlord is different. I can't speak to any landlord. What I would do is open up lines of communication with your landlord. Some landlords are going to make you pay that back later. So my advice to you is, if you stop paying your rent right now, are you going to have this big lump sum of money that you're going to have to pay in 6 or 8 months? Just to be thoughtful of that. What it looks like during recovery is important as well.
Yeah, so I'll just add in also somewhat from the business tenant perspective. So the Dot has a very good point there, and it's essentially the difference between forgiveness and forbearance. And the forbearance is basically just postponing that payment till the next month, and then next month you owe twice as much. So be very explicit in your communications with your landlord, whether you're a residential tenant or a business tenant, to understand the implications of not paying, and don't make any assumptions that that your landlord is going to behave one way or the other without communicating with them. There are provisions in the governor's order that are regarding evictions and local law enforcement's enforcement of those evictions. And so hopefully there are some ways to kind of ease your anxiety over that scenario happening from the state's notice, and that that notice is posted on the Colorado Department of Health or Environment and Health website, as well as a link on the business toolkit. The constitutionality of asking landlords and asking banks to suspend, their collection of rents and creditors the payments due, I think is a question that is going to need to be answered more at the national level. And there are agencies working to do that, both on the the renters side of things for residential, as well as the shopping center owners and commercial property owners who are trying to provide that leniency to their tenants, but their banks are requiring those mortgages to be paid as well. And so it kind of goes on and up the ladder, as you can imagine. And so some of those solutions may need to be taken care of at more of a national, federal level through legislation and relief on the larger financial systems than it is just assuming that your specific landlord is in a position to forgive rent, so to speak. So I really like Dot's point of ensuring just the lines of communication are as open as possible.
All right. Well, thank you. I had a question from a constituent who asked me a couple days ago. They were waiting on unemployment, and I guess they get a PIN number. I wasn't exactly sure how this process works, but they were waiting for this access to the unemployment, and they were wondering what kind of turnaround time that it is typically being done right now for that.
Yeah, so just to give a little background, the first step after you file an unemployment claim is that the system kicks out a PIN number for you to access your claimant account, then to do the last and final steps to then getting requesting payment. So that PIN is generally sent out by mail, and that's for security purposes. I know it's antiquated, but generally during good times we see that come out in five business days. Now, because of the heavy influx, we've seen that increase significantly. At this point, we're seeing it in as many as 2 weeks. We are working on a fix to that, which hopefully should be in place by this weekend to eliminate that wait time. But for now, be patient with us. If you still don't see it after that, feel free at that point to contact us. And keep in mind too, what I want to keep pushing is that our issues with our system are not reducing anyone's benefits. We will be backdating. I totally understand that people need that money now, but we will be backdating, so you will get to see those claims and those benefits.
All right, great. We have one other question in the Q&A right now. It says additional information about an earlier question. I have some commission-based opportunities for my employees, but do not want to interfere with them receiving unemployment. What is a good strategy or a suggestion to go about keeping that commission and then still doing the unemployment?
Yeah, so in terms of that, again, the advice I have is just be responsive and be honest with us in terms of the monies received and anything like that, and then it wouldn't harm the time frame of a benefit. It may hurt the first week depending on what happens, but after that, just be honest and we'll get it taken care of on our side.
Could I ask Daniel a question about we get a lot of questions about the work share program.
Yep.
Could you speak to that a bit?
Sure. So yeah, the work share program done through our Unemployment Insurance Division Employer Services is a program that employers essentially would enter into an agreement with the department, and they would, instead of laying off a workforce or furloughing them, they may reduce the hours of a majority of them, and then the Unemployment Insurance Division would take up the remaining hours and pay those through benefits, through unemployment insurance benefits. So an example would be that an employer reduces an employee down to 20 hours, the employer pays them for the 20 hours, PDLE pays them for the other 20. So for that, we would encourage people to reach out to our unemployment insurance division, employer services, to set up those kind of agreements. It's one that we were actually hoping to run legislation on this year to expand the program. We did not get around to it, so we're doing emergency rules to make that happen. There have been in the past a lot of issues in terms of eligibility, but we're waiving those at this point.
All right. Well, we don't have any more questions in the queue at this point, well, there's one question. What about information that's needed for a disaster loan? What kind of information does someone need for that?
So I don't know if that's to apply or where to apply, but you can apply directly for the disaster loan. It's with the SBA itself. It's not brokered. It's not through a bank. So you would simply go to disasterloan.sba.gov and fill out the information. It's 4 screens. It asks you for some very basic financial data from last year and what your gross sales were, and then basically, personal information. It's very, they've got a very streamlined process. They actually have contracted with Rocket Mortgage with their streamlined underwriting. They may come back and ask for additional information, but if you're interested in applying for that loan, it's very quick and easy to just go and see if you're eligible. It doesn't take very much time at all. And again, you are able to avail yourself of that advance. And I want to be clear, because people come back and are like, oh, $10,000, and it's, it's up to $10,000. So it's based on the information. The 10,000 is the max. So it just depends on what you've entered into that EIDL application.
And how difficult is it to qualify for those loans?
So they've relaxed the standards. So this is for businesses under 500, for sole proprietors, for nonprofits, C3s and 19s. There are even some ways in which, if you're above the size standards that SBA requires, depending on your NAICS code, that can be waived. They've waived it used to be that you had to have sought credit elsewhere, sought a loan elsewhere, and were denied. They've waived that now. So they've really relaxed a lot of the standards. They're going to look at some credit worthiness, but it's not clear. They're not sharing the underwriting principles or standards. There's no credit score. What we hear uniformly from the SBA is, don't self-select out of the process. Try, see if you qualify, because a lot of people are thinking that they may not qualify because of credit issues or size issues. And the SBA is really encouraging people to go ahead and apply.
One other question just came in. Someone who has an S Corp with just me as the owner, is it better to file for PPP or unemployment, and they pay for the unemployment insurance currently?
So
I can't. Go ahead, Angela.
No, you filled this one.
I can't speak to what the first one is, but I can tell you that if you're paying into unemployment, you can look at your benefits. You can calculate your benefits in terms of look at what your average weekly wages have been for the last year. Take a percentage of that. So we take 55% of that number, and then you're going to add an additional $600. So that's going to be your weekly benefit. So I would take that and weigh that against the other option.
And we didn't have a lot of time to go into PPP. It's a little bit of a it takes a little bit of explaining. So I would ask the constituent to give us a call, because it is going to be one of those things where we don't know the benefit for you, particularly on unemployment versus the PPP loan. You can't double dip. So you can't receive the PPP loan, which basically is forgivable if you ramp up your employment to level commensurate with the previous year. So you can't do both. So, but we really probably need to talk through the specific issues to know whether that's really a solution.
So whoever asked that question, just send me an email with your question again. We'll make sure that Angela gets that and gets back to you. Well, we don't have any more questions, but I just want to give a couple. We have a few more minutes. Does anybody want to just do a little round robin and talk a little bit about anything that's relevant to the conversation that you didn't get to say already? Let's just go counterclockwise, and we'll start with Dot.
Thank you. You know, again, I would just encourage people to have grace during this time, and it's hard and it's stressful, and reach out to your council, your constituents, your Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development. Representative Titone, very responsive. If you have a question, we will help you find an answer. We may not have the answer, but we absolutely will help you find an answer. And we're here to help. If we don't have the answer, we know who might. And also check on your neighbors, you know, yell across the street if you have to, stay 6 feet away, but check to make sure people are okay, and let us know what we can do to help.
Angela?
Is this counterclockwise this way?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was beautifully said, Dot. Thank you for that. And we're all running as fast as we can to help small businesses, as is the SBA and all the municipalities, economic development chambers. I mean, we're all pulling together, rowing in the same direction, and it's been an amazing, collaboration. Just one fine point to add is to reach out to your local bank and lending institution. If you need any questions answered on the PPP, for example, new banks are being approved to be SBA loan processors. The PPP goes through a bank, not directly through the SBA. The SBA guarantees that loan. So I just want to make sure that that point isn't missed, is to add that to the list as your local bank as a resource. Thank you.
Cami.
Thank you. And again, thank you for the opportunity to be with you all today. One thing I'd say is that going through this, it's been quite eye-opening for me how many people really care deeply about community and that people come together. I'm especially grateful to be able to work with Daniel and the team at AIDA and all the other partners that have come together in Arvada to create a task force that's working all together to provide resources and tools. So I think there's so much great collaboration happening right now. And to me, it gives me a sense of community and hope that we're in this together. So that's kind of my big takeaway from what's going on, is work together. This isn't something that we're doing in silos. And so ask for help, lean on all of us, because we do really genuinely want to help our businesses and our community get through this.
All right, we'll go to Daniel Chase next.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate the time today, and just know that our number one goal and our only goal right now is to make sure that we do all that we can to keep people whole during this period. Be patient with our systems and be patient with us as we work to get those benefits out the door and to you and your loved ones.
All right, Daniel.
Yeah, same thing. We hope everyone, most importantly, stays safe and healthy. And we're just, to the message to the business owners, we're doing everything we can to figure out what we can do to support. Obviously, this is very challenging, and we want business owners to understand that we are aware of your pain, and we also understand how much you care about your employees and what you want to do to help your employees through this time. And you're trying to make really difficult decisions on how to keep your business alive and how to keep, food on the table for those who work for you, and that have entrusted you with paying their wages. And so, any and every resource that we think is helpful, we are going to communicate. And so, we just ask that you do your best to look into all those resources and understand, again, how mixing and matching those can best help you with your specific goals right now. And any new creative tools that come about, we are going to be making sure that those get blasted out to the community so that you and your employees can take advantage of them.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, and we're not all in the same boat here. We all have different experiences. We all have different scenarios that we're all in, and we're trying to do our best to take care of everyone. When our businesses are succeeding, we can help the employees as well. There's definitely a symbiotic relationship that exists there. So I want to acknowledge that. But thank you all to the guests. You are all incredibly busy, so thank you for being here and sharing your expertise and experiences with us today. I want to let all my constituents know that the information sharing doesn't end with this event. We'll be publishing a weekly newsletter, which has updates to the COVID-19 and resources, as well as news from the Capitol. So you can get that newsletter at my website, briannaforcolorado.com. And, there's lots of online resources. One I just learned about today that the Secretary of State reminded me of is choosecolorado.com/COVID-19, which is a good resource for a lot of business-related things. Again, thank you for your questions. We will get back to you any questions we have not gotten to you yet. And we will get back to you whether we're in the office or not. We're checking our phones, we're checking our emails. Any questions that you have, please direct them to us. We will find the people who have the answers to them. And be sure you stay safe, wash your hands, stay home if you can, and help out your neighbor, because we're all in this community together. And with that, I will say goodbye and thank you very much for joining us today.